Hi, welcome to my talk. My name is Cynthia Gelper, and I'm a content strategist based in Chicago, Illinois, USA. And I'm very excited to be here today with you at Outcome 2021. This is the first time I've ever spoken at a conference in India, and hopefully it won't be the last. I wish I could be there with you in person. Here's just a little information about me. I am, again, based in Chicago, currently working as a consultant with Express Scripts, which is a home delivery pharmacy owned by Cigna. I've also worked for other healthcare companies such as Blue Cross Blue Shield and Humana. I've worked for media companies like the Chicago Tribune, and also education such as University of California, Los Angeles, Cal State, and some other places. And I am really excited about talking to you today about content strategy. So I thought we'd get started by making sure we all agree on some definitions. What is content strategy? This is one definition of it, probably the most succinct one I've ever heard, by David Dillon Thomas, who is a Philadelphia-based content strategist, an excellent, very smart, funny man who wrote a book about cognitive bias in design. And he defines content strategy as using content to achieve a business goal, which basically in a nutshell, I think that's about it. And just to show you an example of how this is applied in practice, this is the Britain's National Health Service website. And as you can see, two versions of it, the mobile and the desktop. And obviously they've done a lot of research and they must know that people come here and search. So they have a prominent search box at the top, as well as opportunities to search either by a health topic or by the name of a medication. So that's really applied content strategy at its best. But tonight we're going to talk about, or today I should say, we're going to talk about product content strategy. So first, I thought it would be a good idea for us to define and agree on what is a product. When I think of the word product, I think of something like something you would use in your house, like laundry detergent or toilet bowl cleaner or dishwashing detergent. But actually, what we're talking about today are digital products. So these are not something tangible. You can't hold them in your hand. They're something that you access usually through an app, a mobile application that will give you an experience. So an experience is doing something or feeling something. So in my examples here, the first one, Spotify, will play music for you and you control whatever music you want to hear. The second example, Ventra, is a commuting and transportation, public transportation app. And that'll tell you based on your location, when the next bus is coming, which bus it is, where's it going. And then finally, a weather application. This one is called Wonderground, Weather Underground, and it'll give you your current weather conditions and you can look up all kinds of details. So all three of those things are giving you an experience rather than a tangible thing that you can hold and touch. So just to get a little bit further into defining what we're talking about, experience versus product, in the case of this talk, they mean the same thing. The user experience design field, which is what content strategy is usually part of. Sometimes it's part of the marketing department of a company, but usually I've found it within UX design or user experience design. UX design can also be referred to as experience design or even XD. And when we talk about a product, sometimes we talk about an experience, which you're going to see as we move through this presentation. So product content strategy could also be called user experience content strategy. And the reason I wanted to define these things before we start is I just don't want people to be confused, because you're going to hear me refer to a product or an experience or an app. And I'm using them all really to mean the same thing. This little thing that you designed or you created that's on your phone that does something for you, that gives you some kind of experience. So, what is product content strategy? That is coming up with a content strategy for one of these little experience giving things or products or apps. Here's another definition about product content strategy. The strategic purpose of UX content, remember, so that's product content, is to meet two sets of goals. The organization's goal, the organization who is paying for this or creating this, and the goals of the people using or the users who are going to have this experience. And this is from a book by a content strategist in Seattle named Tori Podmayersky. It's called Strategic Writing for UX. And she goes into great detail, and it's a really helpful book. I recommend it. So rather than just have me talk about definitions and show you slides about different projects I've worked on, I thought it might be more interesting and easier to understand these concepts if we actually dive into a challenge and create a product content strategy together, which is what we're going to do. So today's product content strategy challenge is we are going to create a COVID-19 tracing app for the province of Quebec, Canada. Now, depending on how familiar you are with Canada, you may know that Canada is supposedly it's a bilingual country, but really you're only going to hear a lot of French in Quebec. If you go anywhere else in Canada, you'll see signs and you'll read instructions and directions on packages, ingredients in French. But only in Quebec are you really going to see people actively speaking French in their lives, hear French on the radio, on the TV, see advertisements in French. It is a majority French speaking city, Montreal and Quebec City and the rest of the province. So we're going to take the the province of Quebec and create an app just for them, not for the entire country of Canada, but just for them to help with their COVID situation. So in my example, we're going to hypothesize that the government of Quebec came to us and we're some kind of a design agency or content strategy consultancy. And they said, we want to keep COVID-19 under control by tracking its spread. And we want people to have a sense of agency or a sense of control over how to protect themselves. And then here are some recent statistics about the situation there. So you can see they had almost 10,000 deaths, which is, it's not huge compared to some of the other countries maybe, but it's 10,000 people. And that's probably more than you want to see, 10,000 more than you want to see. So first thing we're going to do is identify what the city of Quebec or the stakeholder, the business owner, what do they want to get out of this? What is their purpose? They want to show citizens of Quebec their risk. They really want to help businesses stay afloat. They don't want restaurants closing. And they want to save lives. So then we're going to think about what is our purpose as content strategists? What do we want to do? And here's our purpose: creating relevant, appropriate, accurate, and usable content for this audience. And I should say that even though the goals of the business for Quebec are very specific to this project, these goals you could use for every single project. I mean, you always want to have accurate content. You always want your content to be relevant and appropriate and usable. So these are sort of the standards, I guess you would say, not even the purpose, the standards of what we do. Okay, another thing you want to think about before you start is, how are you going to measure success? What will your metrics be? At the end, how will you know if you did a good job? And this is up to you, and maybe it's the business owner who will set these metrics up, but you have to determine what it's going to take to show success. So you could say maybe it's the number of downloads. X number of people have to put this on their phone. Or engagement metrics, which means how much time are people spending on this app once they download it. We don't want them to just get it and then never touch it again. It has to be used. And then finally, reduction in reported cases. Now, this is a great goal, but I think it would be kind of hard to correlate success between the app and an actual reduction in cases. But it is something that, you would like to hope for. So next comes your user research phase. Now, when I say user research, I mean talking to users. And it's not always the content strategist who does this. If you have enough people on your staff, there's usually a dedicated user research person who does it. That's their title. But it could be the content strategist. It depends on how big the project is, how much budget you have, how much time, how much staff. However, even if someone else is actually talking to the users and interviewing them, you definitely want to read or hear what they have to say, because it's going to inform your entire project. So I've shown pictures of people talking to each other right now in person with masks, but realistically, they probably wouldn't talk in person. They would be using the phone or maybe talking through some kind of a Zoom app, some kind of interactive digital communication. So you're going to ask them all kinds of questions. Would you use an app like this? What would make you use an app like this? What would discourage you about it? What would you hope to do on it? What would you hope to get out of it? What would be, a reason that you wouldn't use it? There's all kinds of things that you want to know. And then the other piece of research that you'll do, or that your research team will do, is comparative research. So you want to look at similar products or similar projects that are already out there doing what you want to do. So here are examples of 3 different COVID tracking apps in use throughout the world, one in Australia, one in the US, and one in Canada. Now the Canadian one is already, I'm showing you a French screen, but the app was designed by the government of Canada, so it's English and French, as our app will be, but it's not just for Quebec, it's for the whole country. So the difference is we're only going to think about Quebec. And you can see all 3 of these have little illustrations and varying amounts of text. And we're going to talk some more about the actual content further on, but these are examples of the kinds of screens you're going to see when you first get ready, you first use it after you've downloaded it. They're called onboarding screens. And again, I'll get to that further, but you want to take a look and you want to see, what would I want? Do I like what they're doing, or would I want to do a different approach? It's very good to give you inspiration and maybe a little bit of, sometimes you see things you don't like and I don't want to do it that way, or I don't like the way it's structured. It's always a good idea, I find, to look at other people's work. So now that you've talked to users and you've done your comparisons, what have you actually learned? We learned that our users want to protect themselves and their families. They want to perform activities of daily life, like grocery shopping, going to a zoo, going to the movies, going to a restaurant, getting on a bus, going to school. They just want to go back to normal life, which makes sense. However, we also learned something that presents a few challenges for us. We learned that users are not comfortable with tracing apps. They're afraid. They don't like giving out their personal data. They don't like having the government tracking their whereabouts. And the big thing that we know is, if not enough people sign up for this app, it will not work. I mean, this really depends on people, everybody sort of pulling together and signing up for it. Otherwise, how are you going to know where the coronavirus is? And how are you going to know if a neighborhood is safe if nobody's talking? So these are things that you're going to keep in mind. They're not enough to stop you from moving forward, but these are definitely things that you want to keep in mind as you think about your content. You're going to want to kind of overcome these challenges. So with that in mind, we're going to name a few content strategy goals here. Now, again, without beating everybody over the head with this, we do want to keep reminding users that they can trust us. The data is going to be anonymous. No one can track them. No one will find out where they are or that they have COVID or anything else. It's just about numbers, right? And identifying infections in a certain area. One way that you could publicize the idea that this is safe is to launch a social media campaign, which involves content because it involves social media content. And then finally, the goal here is to make people feel good about contributing and not threatened. And in this case, I would say it's almost like a war effort where you want people to feel like they're, doing their part as Quebec. Well, I won't say Quebecers because I think they refer to themselves as Quebecois, but they're doing it for the team. They're doing it for everyone. Okay, now we're going to think about what we need before we get started. And that is to make sure everyone involved is aligned on goals or agrees on the goals. So that means the two teams, right? The stakeholders, which are also known as the business, the people who are funding this, who are paying for it, which in this case would be Quebec's government. In other cases, it would be, your client, whoever's writing the check. And then your side, your team. So you've probably got UX designers and researchers on your team, product owners, maybe some software developers, business and account people, and you as the content strategist. So if everybody's in agreement, you can move forward. Some of the constraints that you will have to work with are going to be, these are somewhat universal on every project: money. Unless you're Elon Musk, you probably don't have an unlimited budget. And especially if you're working for the government, if you're going to work for a government agency, I'm sure the purse strings are pretty tight. And then time. In this case in particular, time is of the essence. You're not developing a consumer product that, it's a different washing machine detergent, so it doesn't matter when it gets to market. It's really important right now. We're in an emergency already. We've been in an emergency now for a year. So you want to get this out as soon as possible. And then finally, it needs to be in 2 languages because Quebec is a majority French province. And the thing I'll just say about that is if you're in a situation where you have a product that's going to be for a certain culture or a certain population, you probably want somebody who's a native speaker to be writing the content rather than doing it in English first and then translating it. I mean, I would say this app should be bilingual, but I would rather see a French version. Even if I myself can't be the writer, I would prefer a native French person who grew up in Quebec to write it and then translate it, because they're going to use the right language and idioms for the audience. They're going to know how people refer to things. There might be, for example, there's a difference between British English and American English and Indian English. So, and there are differences between the French that is spoken in Quebec and the French that is spoken in Paris. And so we don't even want a Parisian person writing it. We want somebody from Montreal or Quebec. Okay. A content strategy mission statement. This is actually kind of a little fun tool that you can use before you get started. And again, you want to get alignment on this from the teams, the business owners, and your team. So you have a document with a few blank statements and you fill them in. So in this case, we will provide, this is the completed statement, we will provide the citizens of Quebec with a COVID-19 tracing app so that they can lower their risk of getting COVID. This will help the government of Quebec keep people informed and possibly lower their risk and slow down the virus's spread. So you've got your stakeholders agreeing on that, you're good to go. Okay, now that we've done some research, we've defined the metrics for how we know if we succeeded. We've got alignment and we've got a mission statement. We know their goals, we know our goals. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to plan for the different phases of content. We're going to plan a roadmap. Now, what do I mean by different phases of content? The types of content that we will need for this product are going to be used at different stages. So there's such a thing as a content life cycle, which is similar to this, not exactly what I'm talking about, but it's a sort of a cycle in a way. And I'm going to explain each phase as we go. So basically, there were 4 of these phases: downloading, onboarding, engaging, and supporting. And the 5th phase, testing and iterating, is not a content creation phase. It is what you'll be doing to make sure you're succeeding. So without further ado, we'll jump to the first phase, downloading. So this app, in order for people to use it, they have to know that it exists, right? They have to know that it's out there. They have to know that it's just for them. It's a special app just for Quebec for coronavirus. And how is the government of Quebec going to make sure that they do know? Well, there's a number of ways. And depending on where you work, you may or may not be doing this kind of marketing where you're suggesting how they would promote and publicize this product. But in any case, wherever you work and wherever, even if this isn't part of your job, someone will have to do this. They will have to get content out into the world talking about this app and talking about why they should download it and use it and what it will do for them. So some of the places this might appear is social media. And the example of I'm showing you is for the World Health Organization. And it's an app on Instagram about vaccines and why they work. So they've got a campaign on social media trying to get people all over the world to use vaccines. So, and it's very cute, it's colorful, it's cheerful, it's not scary, and it looks international. So, you would maybe have something like that that's Quebec specific about get this app, find out where the COVID hotspots are, protect yourself, etc., whatever. So there are social media, and then there are also social media influencers. So people on social media who have great followings, thousands and sometimes millions of people follow them, and they can say anything they want, and it makes the news. People, they can start fashion trends, or if they change their hair color, it gets in the news. But the point is, if you get some social media influencers who are in Quebec and who are followed by people in Quebec, teenage girls, whatever, that's going to be really helpful to promoting this product. Then there's more traditional media like television and radio and print ads, and then ads in transportation. So buses, Montreal has a metro, underground. There's all kinds of ways you can get the word out about downloading this. Okay, the next type of content is onboarding content. And I think I mentioned it briefly at the beginning. The onboarding content is what someone sees when they first download this product or this application onto their phone. So usually even if it's going to be anonymous, you have to put your phone number in, you have to put your name in. I'm sure they would want your date of birth. So they have demographic information about, people's ages and where they live, and maybe whether or not they have children, I don't know. But the point is, you're going to be going through a group of screens that are going to guide you first into just being able to interact with this app. And then some of the content will also be instructional content about how to use it. And some onboarding is optional. I mean, I've seen apps that say, you want to take a quick tour. And sometimes people go, no, you click to say, no, I don't need it. I don't want to bother. But if you did take that quick tour, you would see little screens explaining what all the features and functionality is. So how to use the app, how to see things on the app, how to find out the latest statistics. And then in an app like this, you would definitely want something about how to invite others. Tell your friends, tell your family, get everybody to sign up. And again, probably reminders that this app is very safe. It will protect you. It's anonymous, and your family and your friends won't know it's you, but they'll be protected from the virus. So again, we want to keep those kind of North Star messaging, whatever it is. I mean, for this app, it's protection and safety, but whatever product you're working on, you're probably going to have a message like that, where there's something that you want every single piece of content and every single image has to sort of reinforce it. Okay, so the third phase is the engagement phase. And at this point, this is for people who are actually using it. So they've downloaded it, they've gone through the onboarding, and now it's part of their life. And hopefully they're using it a lot. So even though this is an example from Virginia of Virginia in the US, it's a COVID tracing app. This is a sort of thing you might see on such an app. So instead of Virginia, it would say Quebec, and it would have numbers of new cases, whether or not it's going up or down. There are many ways you could show this information. You could have charts and tables. You could have a pie. You could have a map. And we'll talk some more about how things would look later. But the idea here is that this is a person who's actively, depending on this app to get a sense of what the COVID situation is. So they're looking up hotspots, they're tracking and getting statistics, and they also can get the latest, maybe vaccine information. And I'm going to talk some more about how the government or how the stakeholder can use that too as a sort of bait or reward for signing up. Okay, finally, supporting contents. This is help text, microcopy, and error messages. Microcopy, if anybody doesn't know, is sometimes in an app or in a website, you're going to see a little circle with a question mark in it or an I. And if you click on it, you'll get a little pop-up explaining what it is that you're doing. Like, say, for example, you open up a bank account and there is a page that says deposits, and you don't really understand what a deposit is, it'll pop up and explain. Error messages tell you when, I hate to say when you've done something wrong, because it shouldn't be making the user feel like they've done something wrong. This is a whole topic for a whole other presentation. Error messages are more a correction to get the user back on track. So for example, if there's a form field asking people to type in their phone number and they type in a bunch of letters, they would get an error message saying, this field is for numbers only, so please retype using numbers, whatever it says. But anyway, this is all text to help people be able to use the app, support. Okay, finally, testing and iterating is not, as I said, it's not a content phase. It's something you'll be able to do as soon as this is available and people are using it. So you'll be able to test content and usability, and you'll be able to revise the content based on your results or your metrics. And content versus usability, just in case anyone doesn't know, with content, you're actually testing the words and the images, and you're asking, is this image clear? Do you understand what this is telling you? Or does this sentence make sense? Does this headline make sense? Usability is more, is it easy to use? Which of these would you click if you wanted to get to the next screen? What would you click on to go back, etc. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the kinds of content that are going to be involved, we need to think about the processes and the tools that will support your product content strategy. And so this is what the content has to do. This is the requirements for the content. It has to assure users that it's safe and that they will be anonymous. Their personal information will not be used or exposed. Your data has to be as accurate and up to date as possible. And that's even more important in a product like this because it's dealing with healthcare and it's also dealing with a crisis that is an ongoing thing that's changing every day. And finally, compliance and legal copy to prevent lawsuits. Now, I haven't talked about this yet, but every product that you will ever work on and that you will ever have to think about from a strategic point of view will have legal and compliance copy. And that is some lawyer or somebody who's in charge of making sure this is in compliance with regulations, with laws. We'll have to look at your copy. We'll have to vet it and make sure it's okay to say such and such. So especially for an app like this, it's really important. And this is why. If we say that if you download this app, you will be guaranteed not to get COVID. And the reason I laughed is because it's so ridiculous. I mean, we could never say that because we would get sued. There's just no way to guarantee it. So what you have to do is the words have to sound like conditional. So you could be protected, or you could lower your risk, or you could avoid COVID by using this app. You might be able to keep the wolf away from the door if you use this app. So the idea is to express the sentiment without saying for sure or definitely guaranteed. Okay, so again, I talked a little bit about the types of content when we discussed downloading, trying to get people to download. They have to know that this app exists. So some of these types of content would be social media, as I discussed, ads on TVs and billboards, and transportation. This is an actual picture from the Montreal Metro, an ad for a winter festival. And another thing the government might try, and some people will do this with apps, they will offer rewards for downloading and using it. It's similar to maybe frequent flyer campaigns or rewards campaigns, where in this case, the reward could be, we're going to share vaccine information as soon as we have it with you. So you'll find out before the general public. Now, I don't know if that's legal. Maybe it isn't. But the idea here is that you want to offer people, you want to dangle a carrot so that they feel like they're getting something special or, it's worthwhile. And then again, you could also appeal as a reward to their sense of altruism that they're helping the general public by, keeping track of this disease. Another tool that we're going to use in content strategy, and this is also a tool that you user experience designers use, are personas. And you may know what these are already, so forgive me if I'm repeating things that you know already, but personas are basically fictional representations of your users, but based on real characteristics. So if you've done a bunch of user research and you've talked to a group of different people of different ages and sexes and different maybe ethnicities, although in Quebec, it's probably not going to be a lot of different ethnicities. Let's say different demographics then. Some of these will be younger, some of these will be older, some will be working, some will be retired. But you've gotten some basic information about the types of people who use this and what they expect to get out of it, why they would or wouldn't use it. The first one we created was Jean-Pierre, who is a retired grandpa and he wants to see his grandchildren. So that's why he wants to help with the COVID app and get rid of the virus. But he's suspicious about showing data. So this is an example of a challenge that you're going to have to deal with the content you're creating. Here's another persona. This woman, she's a little younger and she's got 2 small children. She's the owner of a small business, a boutique, and she's worried about the virus affecting her business and putting small businesses out of business. So you want to create content that will appeal to those people and keep them in mind. User journey maps. These are ways that you can see your scenarios that your users will have when they're going to use this. So if someone thinks they might have been exposed, that would be the first step. The next thing they would do maybe would be to check on the app for a virus hotspot and see if it's where they were. And then finally, let's say it is, they go get a test. Another scenario might be springtime. People want to go outside and meet their friends. So they check the virus risk in a place like a park where they're planning to meet. And if they see that the risk is low, then they feel safe going there. So before you start design, you want to make sure that you and your design staff are working together and not having the designer take off before you. As you see in this example, this is lorem ipsum. It's used sometimes by designers as placeholder text before they get the actual correct text. And this is one of the banes of my existence because it means that they're not working with a content strategist, they're just designing, and then you have to fit the words in. So it's much better if you work in lockstep together. And when I use the word content, I want everybody to know that I'm not just talking about words. Content refers to anything the user's going to see and interact with. So it's images, it's design, it can be video and audio, but it has to be, all of this is content. A lot of times when people say content, they mean text, they mean copy, they mean words, but really content is everything. And while we're on the subject of words, the more you can do with your visual design and the fewer words you can use, the better. Lots of white space is a lot easier to look at. It's easier on the eye and it lets you scan. And as you probably know, a mobile phone screen isn't the best way to read something, especially something long. So you want to make sure that there's plenty of white space, appealing visuals, and if the visuals and the pictures can do the heavy lifting of explaining and making people understand what a screen is or what a function is, all the better. If you have to explain everything in words, it can get very tedious and it can be very dense. This is an example of a screen that I'm not crazy about. It's from the Virginia COVID app. And, you know, granted, it's a serious topic if you did get a COVID test and you were positive, but I just think it's too much text. It's all sort of pushed together. And to me, this looks like a paragraph in a newspaper or a book rather than something that you would see on a mobile screen. And I think you could do more with showing this visually. UX writing is usually how people refer to the words that you're going to see in a product from user experience writing. So make it helpful, concise, brief, easy to understand and skim, and it shouldn't call attention to itself. It should sort of help you gracefully and gently guide you through the app. Okay, voice and tone. Voice and tone are the character, the personality of your product or your app. And this MailChimp is a company that is known for very witty voice and tone, very dry. Here they have get on top of your emails, right? Automate your busy work. It's cute, it's funny, dry wit. However, this might not work for everybody. I don't know if this is going to work for a virus, an app about a virus. But anyway, before you get started, you're going to want to think about voice and tone. And depending on, whether or not how big your content strategy staff is, you might even want to create a voice and tone guide that's thinking about the brand. So in this case, our brand is the city of Quebec. So your product app would probably sound and have the same kind of words as some of their other communications. Okay, so I said voice and tone should be right for the product you're creating and the users it serves. And how are you going to know that? Well, for one thing, you've talked to your users, or somebody on your team has talked to your users. So you have a sense of who they are, what their language is like. If they're very sophisticated or if they're more maybe less educated. How literate are they? This is another thing. The types of words and the types of the literacy level of the people that you're dealing with can vary a lot. Now, in Quebec is it's a large province. It's got rural areas as well as cities. I would think that the app would skew toward the cities, but on the other hand, you want it to be simple enough that a farmer, I don't, not that farmers are stupid, that's not what I mean, but somebody who isn't a university professor who works, on a farm, on the land, that they can understand it. So here are examples of two different products and their voice and tone. And the one on the left is actually from India, and the one on the right is the Australian one that I showed you before. So the one on the left, the Indian one, their vocabulary here is pretty sophisticated. Bluetooth and location generated social graph interaction with someone who could have tested. I mean, it's not the most simplistic vocabulary. And then there are quite a few words here. I mean, not as many as that example that I showed you from Virginia, where the whole thing was covered with words, and there are some graphics, but it is a little bit of reading here. On the right, and then I should mention too that the size of the typeface there is kind of small. So as compared to the one from Australia, COVID safe, the headline is really large. The word next on the button, it's probably the same size as the other button, but the text itself, the body copy, is big and it's easy to read. And even though there are two paragraphs, they're short paragraphs, especially the first one. And if you read them, they're also pretty simple. So Bluetooth signals are used to determine when you're near another user. That's really, not a very complex sentence, as opposed to the ones that we saw before on the long, Virginia page about being positive. So you have to think about how you want to sound to users, how much text, how dense it's going to be, what their vocabulary level is, and also how you can, as I mentioned, how you can make it more appealing to read by having a lot of white space, having graphics and design. And then again, also you want to think about how technical you want to get. I mean, this is a scientific and medical issue, but you're dealing with the general public. So you want to make it understandable so that it's not, you don't have to be an advanced epidemiologist to understand it. Okay. Yay, we did it. So if you've gotten to this point, you've already done all the work. The copy's written, the illustrations are done, everything's been coded, and it's ready for download. And you're going to launch it. You're going to, what they call ship, from the old days when products were actually physically shipped somewhere. So you're going to go back to your metrics and measure your success. And if you decided that success was going to be measured by the number of downloads, the engagement metrics, the reduction in cases, then those are the things you're going to look at. And then you can keep tweaking. As I said, testing and iterating is not a content phase. It's a constant sort of cycle that keeps going until there's no more COVID, which we hope happens soon. In fact, we wish this product could be obsolete tomorrow, right? But in the meantime, you want to make it a good product so that the government of Quebec is very happy with you, and maybe they would come back for another project. They would tell your friend, maybe not their friends, but their business acquaintances and other clients of theirs. And you want to keep testing the results and improving it and making it better, better, and better. So thank you very much today for your attention and for listening to me. And I would love hearing from some of you about what you thought of my presentation. If you have any questions, or if you just want to connect to me on LinkedIn, feel free. And maybe one day I'll get to meet you all in person. Thanks, and Are there any questions?